Will, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah.
So before we get started on one of our Q&A sessions, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks, Kiran. Yeah, so it's Will Ellis. So I'm the managing director here at BW Healthcare Surveyors. So we are an independent specialist surveying firm. So we act in primary care. We only deal with GP practices. So we offer a wide variety of services to GP practices, really. So one of the main things we do is rent reviews. So we assist practices with their rent reviews to make sure that the rent reimbursement they're receiving from the NHS is correct and in line with the current market, or make sure that the rent they're paying the landlord isn't they're not overpaying the landlord. So we assist a lot with rent reviews. We value a lot of practices. So if they've got partnership changes and things, we'll offer market valuations to determine what the value of the premises is, and then all the way through to things like sale and leaseback, which I know is something we're going to be talking about today. So we'll offer sale and leaseback to practices who perhaps are fed up of owning their premises, or they're struggling to recruit new GP partners. We'll look at doing sale and leaseback for practices as well. But really, we're just here to offer help and advice, really, to all practices, all practice managers, GP partners with anything premises related.
Amazing. Thank you, Will. And you're absolutely right. So today's kind of question and answer session is all about sale and leaseback. So first question, back to basics. What is sale and leaseback?
Okay, fine. So when it comes to primary care, sale and leaseback really is where the GP partners or the partners of the practice who own the premises, who hold the GMS contract or provide medical services, they're wanting to sell the premises. They don't want the property ownership, the issues that come with property ownership and things. So they're interested in potentially selling the premises. They're still going to be operating in the surgery. They're still going to be holding the contract, providing medical services, but they no longer want to own the premises. So they will sell the premises to an investor. An investor, some sort of organization, will come in, purchase the premises, and then put a lease in place where the partners will then become leaseholders. So they'll have to be signatories on the lease and become leaseholders. So they'll no longer have to worry about their potentially with things like repair and maintenance of parts of the building and things. They'd pass that on to the investor, but they'd still provide medical services and still run the surgery. And we can kind of assist through that process, really.
Amazing. So what would be a reason why maybe doctors may decide that actually this is a benefit for them, and what are the other benefits to sale and leaseback? And then also, so I suppose on the flip side of that, what are the other challenges that maybe GPs would face in terms of sale and leaseback as well?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest reason why practices are interested in going through a sale and leaseback, and it really isn't for everyone. It's not a solution that is suitable for everyone. But I would say one of the biggest reasons is recruitment issues, is partners retiring and then just being unable to find other partners or other perhaps salaried GPs having to buy those partners out. So perhaps these partners have owned the premises for 20 years. They've maybe got two or three partners. When one partner leaves, that means a partner coming in is going to have to find quite often hundreds of thousands of pounds to buy out the exiting partner. And there just seems to be a shift in partners actually wanting to do that now. New junior GPs don't perhaps want the responsibility of property ownership, and I think a lot of practices are really struggling with recruitment. So I think sale and leaseback is potentially seen as a solution to that, because what it means is when the premises is sold, a GP partner doesn't have to go and find hundreds of thousands of pounds to buy into the practice. They can just be a signatory on the lease. Now, that's not risk or liability free. There's still issues with being signatories on the lease, but I think it is seen as a slightly more attractive proposition for partners who don't have to go and find the funds. So I'd say that was probably the biggest reason we see is because of recruitment. Another reason I would say is for upgrades and improvements. So a lot of practices who are perhaps in desperate need of upgrading the premises, extending the premises, modernizing the premises, but they're struggling to fund that themselves, and they can't find any, or there isn't any grant money available from the NHS. So they can potentially look at a sale and leaseback as a solution to that, because they'd sell to an investor, and sometimes they can, as part of that sale, the investor can agree to perhaps build them an extension or upgrade and improve the surgery. And therefore, that's the investor funding all that rather than the practice or rather than the NHS. So I think they're the kind of certainly two main reasons that we see. But I think it it's certainly not an option for everybody. It's certainly, you know, I think an alternative option, and what other practices partners decide when they're retiring, is rather than them going through a sale and leaseback and selling the premises, maybe they want to retain ownership of the practice. So rather than the partner leaving and selling to an incoming partner, they can't find an incoming partner, so they almost become the investor themselves. So they would become leaseholders, and the landlords, and they would lease it back. So that offers the same kind of solutions, because any incoming partner is still going to just be potentially a tenant of the practice. So there are alternative options, but I mean, the main benefits, I guess, or the main things that practices should be aware of when they go through a sale and leaseback is the rent they pay the landlord is going to get fully reimbursed by the NHS. So that's one of the biggest kind of queries that we have when we take practices through sale and leaseback. They're worried that the landlords over time just going to end up charging them hundreds of thousands of pounds more than they're getting, and they're going to have to find this shortfall in money to pay the landlord. Now that should not be the case. So a practice should never be paying the landlord more than what they're receiving. Sometimes that is the case because perhaps practices haven't had the correct representation to take them through the process, and they don't have the necessary protections in the lease. But as long as they do things the right way, and they have assistance through surveyors like ourselves or solicitors, and they make sure they've got those necessary protections in there, then that's certainly something that they'll be aware of, that they should always be fully reimbursed. I think something else is their repair and maintenance obligations as well. Sometimes when you go through a sale and leaseback, you've kind of got two options. If from a tenancy point of view, from the partnership point of view, is they're either going to be just responsible for the internal repair and maintenance, or they'll be responsible for both internal and external. If they're just responsible for the internal, it means they don't have to worry about the external parts of the building, maintaining that. That's going to be the landlord's responsibility. If it's the internal, then they can actually retain some money from the NHS, so they can actually put some money aside, almost put it into a sinking fund, and they can use that money to pay for the repairs and maintenance. So I guess that's a benefit, is that they'll either not have to worry about being responsible for the external repair, or they'll have money to pay for the external repair. And in either way, it shouldn't be a financial burden anymore, the external repair and maintenance of the premises. So I mean, I would say, you know, there's a few other pros, but I mean, they're the kind of the main ones really of going through a sale and leaseback. The kind of I guess the downsides is the liability of the lease. So yes, they don't have the responsibility of the property ownership anymore, but they're still signing up to a long-term lease, and that lease might have obligations in there for them to perhaps decorate the surgery every 3 to 5 years. It will certainly have an obligation that they need to keep the surgery in its current state of repair, and that is kind of a big issue when it comes to sale and leaseback at the end of the lease. So most leases, when you go through a sale and leaseback, are probably somewhere between 10 and 15 years. That's a very, very common lease. It doesn't have to be that lease length. It could be slightly less, could be slightly more, but most of them are somewhere between 10 and 15 years. So they'll sign up to a lease, but what it means is on day one, the quality and the standard of the surgery has to be the same as it is at the end of the lease after 15 years. And if it isn't, then the landlord is in their rights to ask the practice to bring it back up to those standards. And so I think it's just making sure that practices are aware of their potential liabilities and what their obligations are within the lease. And again, it's just why it's so important to get independent advice before they sign up to anything, to make sure they understand what all their obligations are.
Fantastic. And I suppose, just from a practice point of view and a partner's point of view, how would say if I was a GP partner, how would I know that this is the right option for me? Is this something that yourself would go through with us as well and be able to advise and guide on whether this is the best option, or if there's other alternatives as well?
Yeah, that's what we do with all our clients, because it's just it's such a long process, sale and leaseback. It's important that partners are fully aware of all their risks, all the benefits, all the downsides, because they're going to find out eventually. So what we tend to do as a matter of course is we'll set up a very similar, a Teams meeting like this, have perhaps a 45-minute Teams meeting with all the partners. We've got a presentation that we can go through, talk about the pros and the cons in a lot more detail, talk about their specific circumstances, talk about the potential value of the premises as well, what the value of the premises is, and then also talk about their alternative options, what their other options are, like I've just said, one of them being perhaps they don't want to sell the surgery, they can become landlords themselves. But really, it's just we can't make their decision for them. We can give
Yeah.
them all the facts, but it's completely their decision. It depends on whether I guess it depends on how stressful they find property ownership. Some find it more stressful than others. Some just like the fact that they own the premises. They enjoy the investment side of things. So it is just such a unique an individual basis that I guess all we can do as a company is offer our experience and our knowledge of the kind of the pros and the upsides and the downsides, but ultimately it's going to be the partner's decision. And it can be quite difficult when you've got multiple partners, because you might have 5 partners and there might be 2 partners that really want to go through sale and leaseback and 3 that really don't. And then that's just a discussion that they're going to have as a partnership. We can give as much information as we can, but ultimately it's going to be their decision on what they want to do and what they decide.
Fantastic. And just one final question. Is there anything else that we need to know about sale and leaseback?
I don't think so. I think the main thing is just get representation, and I'm not just saying that because we're a surveying firm. Even if you don't use ourselves, just use somebody to have your back, to understand it from your perspective, because the landlord's going to have their own surveyor, and yes, their surveyor will be doing things, but they'll have the landlord's best interests at heart. They'll want you to sign the longest lease. They'll want you to be responsible for all the repairs and maintenance. So you need somebody. The practice will need somebody to be fighting their corner, and that's through surveyors like ourselves or solicitors. And just make sure to get as much advice as possible is what I would say.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for a quick run through of sale and leaseback.
No
And
problem.
for further information, all of your contact details are on our DKJ Health Hub, or
Great.
they can contact you directly through your website or through your LinkedIn page as well. So thank you so much,
Perfect.
Will.
No problem at all. Thank you.